So let's move into the next 45 minutes together, beginning with a short poem. The short poem is called The Real Work, and it's by Wendell Berry. And if you haven't come to him before, he was born in 1934. He's a poet, a farmer, and an environmental activist. Original language was English for this poem. It's maybe that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And when we no longer know which way to go, we have come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. This poem sings to me, and why I chose it is it's those questions that really awaken my soul and help me form new narratives with others, keep me on my journey towards reconciling people, planet, nature, climate. And I hope it left something with you. We'll share the poem in the chat later. So with no further ado, let's introduce the panel and the themes. In this panel, we'll hear from women leading change, about initiatives, including women-led initiatives, about leading systemic change, about what happens when people have the confidence, the competence, they understand why, and above all else, they have hope, when we move through allyship into solidarity, into action. So that's reconciling, as I said earlier, to people, nature, planet, the climate. This is about movement and communities, wherever they are. So welcome to the Local Solutions, Including Cities and Power to the People panel. What to expect from this panel? We've got 6 amazing women on this panel who will share their 2030 vision, but what's happening now. And at the very end, as you've seen on other panels, their recommendations to be taken forward to COP27. So I'm going to introduce the panel and then give them their space to share their visions. So first of all, we have Ursula. Hello and welcome.
Hi.
Ursula is an internationally recognised opinion leader in sustainable fashion. She's a mentor, curator and author. Her multi-award-winning brand, From Somewhere, was pioneering in the field of upcycling. And in 2013, she co-founded Fashion Revolution, now the world's largest fashion activism movement, with teams in over 80 countries. And in 2021, she published her first book, Loved Clothes Last. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Moving on to Lorna. Lorna Gold. Hello, Lorna. Lorna Gold is the Director of Movement at Faith Invest and the Board President at Loud at Sea Movement, the global Catholic environmental network. She is a contributor in The Letter, a major new documentary featuring Pope Francis and environmental activists. She is also an author of Climate Generation, a heartfelt personal account of her own struggle as a mother waking up to the climate emergency. Welcome, Lorna. And Judy. Hello, Judy. Judy Ling Wong, CBE, is a poet, painter, environmentalist, probably best known as the honorary president of the Black Environmental Network. She's recognised internationally as a pioneer in the field of multicultural environmental participation. Welcome. And Sophie. Hello, Sophie, welcome. Sophie Lambin is CEO and founder of Kite Insights, a research, learning and capacity building organisation at the nexus of human and planetary issues. She is also the founder of the Climate School, which provides employees in any job, in any company with the knowledge, motivation and tools to act on climate in their work. Welcome. And on to Aisha Kareem. Welcome and hello.
Hello.
Hello. Aisha is a doctor from Pakistan and a Malala Fund Girl Fellow. She is a young feminist climate activist whose work is mainly directed towards girls and women's health and their education. Ayesha strongly believes that politically aware, healthy young women and girls can play a central role against the climate change. Currently, she is designing a gender-responsive climate disaster response training kit. And Nicola Milson is a seasoned sustainability professional who spent over 20 years working inside, outside, and alongside organizations to develop solutions towards businesses that serve both people and the planet. Deeply entrepreneurial, most recently, she set up She Leads Change, a leadership program to get more people involved in changing the world from an authentic and net connected place. And not to forget me, although mine will be short and sweet because you're not here to listen to me. I'm Erica Neves, and I work across the areas of reaching people, often the hardest to reach and most disengaged audiences, and building communities and movements, learning and behavioural change solutions, and applying enabling technology. I'm a board trustee at the Eden Project, and Eden is creating a movement that builds relationships between people and the natural world to demonstrate the power of working together for the benefit of all living things. But back to the reason you're here, to hear from our amazing lineup. So let's get going. I'd really love to welcome our first speaker, Judy. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you, Erica. And it's a pleasure to be with you all. My vision is that conceptually, we must work in the context that everything is local and global. Whatever policy is in place at national or international level, the success of implementation is tested at the local level. The core principle for effective participation is that it is those that are affected that should set the agenda and lead. This means that 50% of those involved must be women for those that are affected to be fully represented. In order for us to go forwards in this context, local structures for the participation of women must go into place. I would like to share two examples that can be scaled up. The first, in the UK, the Centre for Alternative Technology, in partnership with the Local Government Association, runs a 2-day intensive leadership course for their officers and councillors called Responding to the Climate Emergency. It covers a whole spectrum of knowledge and skills alongside practical actions with modules such as local climate action in practice and the co-benefits of climate change actions. As part of this course, I run a module called Social Justice on the Road to Net Zero. This module includes practical information on the structural elements of the framework that needs to go into place in order to unlock effective participation. It is applicable to bringing forward any disadvantaged or socially excluded group, including women. The three main themes are representation, engagement, and provision. I will now highlight these in relationship to women. Representation. Local government needs to strategically set targets within their policy and strategies to include women on decision-making committees, consultations, and working groups. Number two, engagement. Local government must reach out to identify women that can make a difference. This is not only about established activists and experts, but also about spotting women with potential and empowering them by offering access to information, jobs, and other opportunities, specific training, mentoring, and other experiences that stimulate and unlock their full participation, to take action to protect people and planet at different levels, including taking up the reins of power. Number three, provision. This theme is about recognizing that there are many things that individuals can do, for example, within their lifestyles and volunteering to protect nature, but there are things that only expert organizations and government can do, such as making laws to prevent environmental damage, the provision of housing and designing the built environment so that it protects people from the inevitable impact of climate change, the creation of green spaces in urban areas, the supply of water, or the integration of sustainability into education. This provision must be negotiated with women working within power structures. The second example, Climate Reframe UK, is an open database of multicultural environmental activists and experts. This is a great model to extend the inclusion of any excluded group, including women. A local database listing women active in different dimensions of climate action would be invaluable. It can be used by local government, organizers of conferences or events, organizations looking for board members or working groups, policy consultations, and so on. Besides established women, it can also include emerging talent. This can open up empowerment of women and maximize their contribution so simply by making them readily visible. Among women themselves, it will also facilitate networking and partnership, thereby strengthening their position. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Judy. I saw themes around structures driving focus and action and unlocking full participation and so much more from your sharing. Thank you. Over to our second speaker, Ursula.
Hello. Well, weirdly enough, I work in fashion, and my vision is that we will be spending hours talking about the clothes that we wear rather than just buy something and throwing it away after a few minutes. I mean, we're all women, we're all here, we're all impactful, but the one thing that we have in common is that every day we wake up, we open our wardrobe and we get dressed. And like us, billions of others. What we wear has a profound impact, not just on people, but on nature as well. So the idea that we are now, so many of us are wearing other people's misery is something that I am radically trying to change. For me, clothes are my chosen skin, and I want to wear people's pride. I want to wear people's toil. I want to wear people's dignity. And so I believe that we all have an opportunity to make big differences just in the way that we wear things. If we were to think, do you think about the people who make your clothes, not just the brand, but the individuals, those hands that touch them before you do? Do you imagine how those people go to bed at night? Can they feed their family? Are they safe? Do you check the labels to see the ingredients that comprise the clothes that we wear? I mean, from pesticides to polyester, we are wearing all sorts of things. They're right next to our skin, and our skin is the second most absorbent organ in our body. And when we care for our clothes, when we wash them, where do those chemicals go? There is a bit of a misinterpretation that wool or cotton, being natural fibers, will just biodegrade. Well, they degrade enough, but what will they carry into the soil with them? So we can speak with the clothes that we wear. We can make space with the clothes that we wear. Right now, every single high street from Milan to Mumbai looks the same. How about we bring forward those young, amazing designers that are actually dealing with the consequences of our overproduction and mass consumption? I'm talking upcyclists in Africa, in Ghana, in Chile, in India. I am talking regenerists, people that are farming the cotton and then weaving it and then wearing it. We have an array of new solutions that are coming right in front of our very eyes, and we keep ignoring them for that cheap top, that quick buy, that fix that doesn't fix anything. It certainly doesn't fix our wardrobe nor our personal problems. So fashion employs billions of people. It is an industry which has designed itself to exploit both people and nature historically. We have an opportunity to change this because we all wear clothes. Fashion Revolution is the movement I co-founded, and we're present in so many countries, over 80 countries. So I would implore all of you to go and find your local representatives and look for solutions in which you can engage, because sometimes changing the world is a series of tiny steps. After all, what is a trend? A trend is somebody doing something amazing and everybody wanting to follow them. So let us be that trend. Let us be the one that lead by creating that different example. I always say, loved clothes last. And the point is that the long road to circularity, which we're all looking for, demands longevity. It demands the respect of your clothing, the respect for the people who made them, understanding what the clothes are made of, and for the fashion industry eventually to be regulated in order for us to have that knowledge and have that information. But in the meantime, wear your clothes consciously. It makes a difference.
Thank you so much. I think the words that jumped out of me from what you shared were respect, and how we have the power to change the industry because we all wear clothes, and changing the industry to an industry that is based on respect. Oh, wonderful words. Thank you so much. So from industry-wide, industry level, Sophie addresses challenges across industries and sectors. Welcome, Sophie.
Thank you, Erica. So at the Climate School, our work focuses on the private sector mostly, and on the role of employees in driving climate action in their companies. So my vision for 2030 is a world where every employee in every company has the knowledge or the head, the motivation or the heart, and the tools or the hands to act on climate in their work, and to do so in a way that is just, inclusive, and locally relevant. Integral to achieving this vision is equal access to education, both in general and in climate specifically. This is essential to achieve a just climate transition, as we cannot leave people behind in the green economy. We also need to be as ready for full transformation as possible. Not, as Bianca often says, not tackling the climate crisis with one hand tied behind our back, with all the untapped future innovators of the world, climate negotiators and frontline workers playing their parts and deploying solutions. To achieve this vision, I'd like to break down what I mean by head, heart, and hand, and where I see opportunities and some challenges for women, in particular in these areas. Understanding the science and facts of climate is important, the head. We also need to help people sort through misinformation and greenwashing. For instance, the term carbon footprint was actually, as many of you know, invented by oil and gas companies and their marketing people to shift responsibility away from themselves into individuals. There's much relearning that we also need to do. And we need to help people draw deeper and more complex connection between climate and its impacts. In our research of 7,000 private sector employees in the world, in the US, UK, Europe, Brazil, and India, and Indonesia, we found that people have a much better understanding of the impact of climate on the planet than on people. For instance, more than 80% of respondents correctly answered the statement of the current state of the climate emergency, but less than half of the respondents could correctly answer whether women are more impacted by climate change than men. This might sound disheartening, but I think there is hope. In fact, that a lack of progress on climate change is perhaps not because people don't care, but because people don't know. In fact, in our research, we see that people really do care. 83% of respondents say they are ready and willing to take action on climate in the context of their work. And 70% say that acting on climate change at work was important for their motivation and well-being. Second, the heart or the motivation. That leads me to talk about the motivation to act. I believe that only by tapping into people's emotional connection with climate and its impact, we will ever be able to achieve real progress unless we manage to help them to make that emotional connection. For instance, when we consider that nations don't shoulder the burden of climate change equally, that the richest and most resilient countries are responsible for the carbon emission that the most vulnerable population have to bear the worst impact of, or that 80% of climate refugees are women, these facts may cause a feeling of guilt, anger, shame. I believe that care, ultimately care, is what will carry us further. Care has enormous ripple effect that guilt or shame do not. The impact of the crisis on women and girls may be the emotional trigger that some people need to access their heart and to find the motivation to act that maybe our heads cannot inspire. It's also important that we educate people to understand that women obviously are not just victims of climate change, but they are so much more leaders, early adopters of the climate movement and adopters of revolutionary solutions. I've been privileged in my career to have an up and close view of the nexus of gender and climate and the ways that women are not just disproportionately impacted, but how they have an outsized positive influence on it. My vision is that knowledge and understanding of gender and climate might become mainstream, that forums like today aren't the only place where these conversations are held, but they are increasingly widely understood and acted upon in the private sector. In the context of work, this conception of women and climate is meaningful. For instance, when procurement officers working with women vendors start to reimagine their work together as climate and gender solution, there are so many opportunities for scaling that model across not just their own, but other business as well. And we have seen this happen at the pilot level, but we need to see this done at scale. And lastly, my last point about the hands and the tools to act. Once companies have helped their people understand the climate crisis and the impact on its people, then they need to enable them to do something about it. When it comes to the private sector, the green transformation is going to happen outside the boardroom. Employees who are ready now, they just need the mandate to act. It's up to companies now to let the people do what they do best, innovate and solve problems. We have seen in our research that there is a risk to companies who don't do so. 15%, 15 out of 100 of the respondents in our survey said that they would be willing to leave their job if they were not able to act on climate at work. That's up 5% from our previous survey in 2020. Giving people the tools to act also means recognizing and overcoming barriers. Women, for instance, may feel that a climate learning program at work is hard to balance with job demands and family care. How can companies create the right condition for people to learn? There is also a gender dimension, not just to what we learn, but to how we learn it. And getting this right will have impact way beyond just climate or gender. That's why the green transformation is not just a compliance exercise, but truly an invitation to people to think about their jobs beyond company boundaries and reimagine the ways they can impact local and global communities through their roles. Thank you.
Thank you. What happens when a workforce is given the mandate and the agency and the confidence? Thank you. What's possible? Head, hearts and hands. I'm now curious to hear from Aisha. Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much. Well, my vision for the year 2030 and more importantly to the upcoming years that lead to 2030 is to see equal but more importantly fair representation of different stakeholder groups of the community, especially the marginalized groups in climate negotiations and decision-making spaces. and not only having these participants as in the discussion forums, but also in leadership positions. Well, I genuinely wish to see solutions, suggestions, and influencing of decisions related to climate crisis impacts that concern women, transgender, indigenous people, or other marginalized elements of the community, coming from these people themselves, since the policies and the decisions have the direct impact on the lives of these marginalized people. And I think so far we have quite established this thing that the climate emergency that we're facing today is deeply rooted to some complex social issues and injustices that have been allowed to perpetuate over last years. And gender inequality, especially in the part of the region where I come from, is one of the major causes to this climate emergency. It is indeed because of this discrimination that women are still not fairly represented, especially when it comes to leadership structures amongst the policymakers. And you can't actually expect your needs to be thought of when there is absolutely no one in the room to advocate for it. And hence, our needs have never been truly part of climate adaptation or resilience talks. And despite all this, women have come up with brilliant solutions to make sure that they have a plan, they have something to, deal with the impacts of the climate change. Based on my experience and the things that I have seen coming from the developing part of the world, where the economies are failing or there's political unrest and whatnot, initiatives that were started by the community members have been able to reach people who would not have been otherwise reached had it been entirely on the shoulders of the government. And also the outreach of these of such responses is wide and, much importantly, quicker, as these are free of bureaucratic delays. For example, in the recent floods that hit Pakistan, two amazing women came up with a movement called Mahwari Justice, which was basically about spreading awareness related to period poverty. And it's centered around the fact that periods, they don't stop even in the worst of the disasters. And so through their initiative, they were able to reach thousands of flood affected women and provide them with the much needed sanitary napkins and sanitary pads. And I think it is worth mentioning here that you can only expect such initiatives to come from women. Small solutions that are often ignored when we're trying to fix the bigger picture are based on the problems that women face in the actual reality. And what makes them really beautiful is that their impact is much more inclusive and widespread. And this shows that the strength of people powered solution cannot be underestimated. I genuinely believe that climate movement would not have scaled up at its present status if it wasn't for the noise that the young people made, and especially young girls and women who are at the front lines of these issues and are still showing up to solve the crisis that they are facing. And they're not shying away to discuss hard problems. And I think without the efforts and local action of civil society members, things would have been even worse than they are now. And I feel that to avoid the ecological collapse that we're headed into, we need to mobilize communities and its people. And lastly, I would like to add that leaders really need to recognize that we cannot achieve the sustainable development goal agenda for the year 2030 if people who are the most crucial stakeholders in climate emergency are involved in climate action at all levels, and particularly leadership levels. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And hearing about those initiatives led by women reaching harder to reach audiences and the audiences that governments would not reach or see, not only reaching them, but quickly and meeting needs that wouldn't be met ordinarily. So thank you so much. Now we come to Lorna to hear about movement and community build. No, we don't, because we stopped our order at the last minute. So we actually come to Nicola. How are you?
Thank you.
Welcome to the stage.
And actually, so much of what I want to speak about is Ayesha is a role model for. So it's wonderful to come after you. I want to speak about the fact that we need new leadership to tackle the problems we face, that we can't rely on single individuals anymore, particularly individuals that look fairly similar, to steer large ships in the direction of change. We need the diversity and energy of each of us taking agency to lead in our own ways. We need an upspring, an uprising of local ideas and initiatives, and we need each of us to be able to respond to uncertainty and rapid change as leaders in our own right. So for me, the vision is that each of us is a leader. Each of us can step up, speak out, create impactful change in our own unique and meaningful way. So if you think we need a different world in whatever way you see it, this is about you, me, all of us taking action to lead from that authentic place and connect with others to lead change. And of course, we've seen people do this in multiple ways. You've heard from the previous speakers, excuse me, how they've modeled that. But there's people who did it on the basis of academic research. We've seen Kate Hoffman setting up Grow Up Farms and aquaculture program to look at different kinds of ways of feeding people. We've seen people do it on the back of personal passion. Ellen MacArthur, the sailor, the yachtsman, appalled at ocean plastic, setting up a huge initiative around circular economy, leveraging her passion for the ocean, her contacts from sailing, to scale an extraordinary response in the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We've seen people respond around personal tragedy. I'm thinking here of Jackie in Kenya, who found herself widowed and experienced appalling violation of human rights and now runs an organization to help others in her situation, reaching out to the global audience to scale. We've seen it for dedication to profession. And here I'm thinking of Josie, who set up the Climate Coaches Alliance, which many of you may be part of, to really challenge an entire type of career to think differently and act differently with climate. So there's many different ways to do that. Those are all as entrepreneurs. But of course, many people work inside large organizations. And there's an opportunity to lead inside organizations to really do things differently as an intrapreneur. And here an example is AB InBev and Evergreen, and starting to think about the byproducts of beer and what could be done with them. So really what I want to speak about is, how do we each find our own leadership? How do we find our resources, our contacts and our voice to speak up, step up? But of course, there's a second part to this vision. And the second part is to create fertile ground for each person to lead. For us as women who are perhaps a little bit older, to offer that hand up. For people who can have got access to resources, for example, procurement, to create a permeability for other people to get involved, to support entrepreneurs, to reward intrapreneurs. The vision, therefore, is twofold, each of us leading in our own authentic way and having a world that supports that in every which way. And for COP, I think it's simple. Let's find funding to support visibility of women-owned solutions. We're creating visibility of women who are leading in this area. But what about all the entrepreneurs and the intrapreneurs out there doing extraordinary things? Can we showcase them? Can we accelerate them? Can we connect them? That would be an extraordinary thing for COP to do.
Thank you. Showcasing the intrapreneurs and the entrepreneurs. and lifting women in those communities up. Thank you so much. So now I get back to our final speaker, Lorna. Thank you very much, Lorna. Take the stage.
Thanks, Erica, and thanks to all the panelists for these wonderful contributions. I feel almost like there's nothing left to say, having listened to all these amazing contributions. In thinking about my vision for 2030 and listening to that beautiful poem that you read, Erica, at the start, I was actually taken back to the extraordinary journey I went on last year when we were making the feature documentary film, The Letter, A Message for Our Earth. It was a life-changing experience for me that I shared with other protagonists, environmental activists, on a journey which took us to meet Pope Francis in Rome and then to journey on to Assisi, to the birthplace of Saint Francis. The story of this film is almost like an allegory of us as a human species as we're trying to come to terms and to move forward in tackling the ecological crisis. The protagonists in the film are amongst those most affected by climate change. An Amazonian chief who faces daily death threats because of his activism, a young climate refugee from Senegal, marine biologists who found themselves documenting the death of the coral reefs, and a young Indian climate activist who fears for her future. Each of these people in the film responds to an invitation from Pope Francis to enter into dialogue with him and with each other on the state of the planet. And the film tells the story of their journey, our journey. During the production of the film, we met with the Pope and we had the most extraordinary dialogue in which many powerful things were said. Many of you may know that Pope Francis in 2015 wrote his own letter, Laudato Si, which then has inspired this film. But one thing really struck with me, and I think it resonates with what we've been saying today. He said that unity right now means saving Mother Earth, saving biodiversity, saving each other, and saving our children. His words struck me deeply, a call to unity, a call to heal divisions. And chatting this over with this extraordinary group of people afterwards, we realised that each of us, to a certain extent, has been fighting climate change in our own bubble. The scientists talking mainly to the scientists, the young climate activists mainly talking to young climate activists. So, but there's a great need now for us to work intersectionally, to work across borders, across divisions. The encounter in the film led us as a small group of people to start to look at each other differently and to start to recognise the need to step into each other's shoes. When we did that, we opened ourselves up with compassion and with great care to the hurt and the pain that the climate crisis is already causing in the lives of others. Hurt that, frankly, is still largely hidden from the lives that most of us are leading in the global north. In our journey together, we realised that our ability to feel that pain and not to look away, not to run away from it, is an essential part of the healing process that will enable us to move forward. We realised we can only find the strength to do what needs to be done if we are, at least in part, allow our hearts to be broken by where we have come to as a humanity, as a society. And to do that, to find that emotional connection, we need to know the people, we need to know the faces, the names of the people who are directly affected by our collective failure to act. For me, the acceptance of this vulnerability is an essential step in opening our hearts to the profound change that we all need now. It's about recognising the profound injustice and recovering and restoring our shared humanity in harmony with each other and the earth. It becomes the wellspring from which a sense of renewed purpose, of shared hope, and every other action we need to take can emerge. And that would be my vision for 2030, that we find that shared purpose, each of us as leaders. Now, above all, what is needed to face the challenges of the ecological crisis that it will bring, we need collaboration and coordination across all sectors, and in a new realisation of where we are right now, with deep compassion in this quest for a deeper dialogue. We're listening to those voices of those who are routinely ignored becomes essential and is key to the path to moving forward. And for us in Laudato Si movement, of which I'm the board president, and with the Faith Invest team, we're committed over the coming year to make the dialogues that this film has sparked happen in many thousands of towns and cities and communities, harnessing the world of faith, the parishes, the temples, the synagogues, to convene dialogues that reach across and give names and faces to those affected by the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorna. Call for unity, shared humanity and harmony. Well, we've had a whirlwind of talks, heard visions for 2030, listened to some of the current amazing work happening across the world, globally and at a local level, towards those visions, those collective visions of us all around reconciling people, planet, nature, climate. And threads that connect everybody that's spoken today, whether in this panel or all of the other panels, and these awesome women-led or women-helped initiatives. Our last part of the panel, though, before we go on to a break, is to really think about that call to action for the leaders at COP. What is it that this panel wants to leave with them as their recommendation, their call to action? And this is how we'll close this panel, with this, which we will record at She Changes Climate and give to those leaders. So let's start again in the order that we had. And I'd love you to give your recommendation to the COP27 leaders, starting with Ursula. Oh, I think you might be on mute.
First of all, I would like to say, why isn't fashion included in these important conversations? This continues to reiterate the point that fashion is frivolous. It is not. It is a deadly serious industry. So what I really want to see by 2030 is a regulated industry, an industry where transparency is mandatory, and where supply chain workers are paid a dignified living wage and are allowed to unionize and organize. The truth is that for us citizens, it is a wonderful opportunity to make a difference with our clothes. But when it comes to brands and governments, it is a moral obligation to redress the social and environmental impact of this industry.
You're on mute.
Okay, and on to number 2. I think it was Judy, you are next.
My recommendation is that we should strategically put in local frameworks to ensure that there will be 50% of women represented within decision-making structures locally. This is because local structures lead to the character of global structures.
Thank you. And on to Sophie.
So mine is simple. I would propose that blue badge at COP are awarded on the basis of their holders having each completed a climate training course, tapping into their head, their heart and their hands, and having had at least one conversation with a female climate activist from any corner of the world.
Thank you. Aisha.
Well, like Ursula mentioned, that she thinks that fashion should be part of these talks, and I personally believe that healthcare needs to be the part of these conversations as well. And because climate change has a very direct impact on the health of people, and one core recommendation that I have for the world leaders is to provide separate funds for local feminist organizations, because these have actually proven to be the real change makers in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicola.
Let's create pathways for women entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, for their solutions to be scaled and to be used. Let's build climate innovation accelerators. Let's investigate how we make sure that we have diversity of women in that group. And let's work in, out, and across organizations to ensure that we can lead change.
Thank you. And Lorna.
To take time to meet with and to listen to those on the front lines of climate injustice, those who are most impacted, and to do that at COP and not to wait, and to allow their experiences to shape the bold decisions that now need to be taken, amongst which to sign up and to agree to a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, and to allow adequate funding for loss and damage.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. Wow, what a set of recommendations combined with all of the others we've heard today. A robust call to action for those leaders at COP27. Just want to leave with saying thank you so much for all of you, for the work that you're doing, for what you've shared with us today and spending this time with us on this panel. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure to moderate you all. Please do add any other questions that you've got in the chat. We will come to these if you've got them, and we will respond to them. We've got a break now that we can respond to, things like that. Thank you again, panel. It's been so lovely having you, and thanks to She Changes Climate for putting this event on. I know that everybody has a break now, but there's a fantastic panel coming up after the break, which is Planetary House Dialogue with some awesome panel members as well. Back over to you, She Changes Climate.